Hey guys, tonight we begin with a man who seemed to treat the laws of physics like polite suggestions and lived as if sleep were a negotiable suggestion. Leonardo da Vinci. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Before we marvel at Leonardo da Vinci's genius inventions, we need to understand who or what we're dealing with. Leonardo wasn't a normal human being. Normal humans sleep, forget things, and sometimes stare at walls. Leonardo did all three at the same time and then invented a new way to stare at walls more efficiently. Born in 1452 in the tiny Tuscan town of Vinci, Leonardo arrived in the world as an illegitimate child, which in the Renaissance meant you didn't inherit property, but you did inherit trauma. Fortunately, he compensated by developing a brain that acted like it had been plugged directly into the universe's debug mode. While other kids were playing with sticks, Leonardo was sketching swirling water currents and dismantling mechanical toys to see how the gears felt about their life choices. By age 10, he was probably already measuring bird wings and asking uncomfortable questions like, why doesn't the human shoulder rotate like this? Renaissance parents didn't have guidance counselors for that kind of thing. He had almost no formal education, no Latin grammar drills, no Greek philosophy seminars, which should have limited his potential. Instead, it somehow freed him. Leonardo learned by poking reality with a stick until it confessed its secrets. He taught himself anatomy by cutting open corpses at night. Totally normal behavior. Taught himself physics by dropping objects off heights. Still normal. And taught himself engineering by designing devices that looked suspiciously like OSHA violations in sketch form. His notebooks thousands of pages long read like the diary of a man suffering from weaponized curiosity. Inside you'll find diagrams of flying machines, dissections of eyeballs, sketches of flow dynamics, war machines, botanical studies, and of course a grocery list written in mirror script because being normal was apparently illegal in Leonardo's mind. Working with Leonardo was chaos. Patrons hired him to paint, and he would eventually, but only after inventing two musical instruments, redesigning their city's sewage system, and taking a 5-month detour into studying the mechanics of laughter. Finishing paintings was optional. Learning everything was mandatory. You don't get Leonardo's inventions without Leonardo's madness. He wasn't improving the world. He was challenging it to a duel. Every phenomenon, every object, every law of nature was just another opponent to outthink, outsketch, or quietly insult through engineering. And that's how every Leonardo invention begins, with a man who looked at existence and thought, you know what? I can fix this. Leonardo da Vinci had many obsessions, but none were as doomed, majestic, or physically dangerous as his dream of human flight. Birds taunted him. Not intentionally. Birds were simply minding their business. But Leonardo took it personally. He watched them glide effortlessly through the sky and thought with complete sincerity, yes, I too shall do this. Using medieval materials and leg strength alone. Thus was born the ornithopter, a flying machine powered by the pilot's arms, legs, back, hope, and every muscle group humans were never intended to use simultaneously. It featured massive, beautifully sketched wings modeled after bats, eagles, and whatever else Leonardo studied while definitely avoiding deadlines. To operate it, you would strap yourself into a wooden frame, essentially a Renaissance torture rack, then flap the wings using ropes, levers, and blind optimism. It's unclear who Leonardo imagined would pilot this device, but based on the required strength, it was either Hercules or someone with thighs powerful enough to crush marble columns. So, basically, no one alive in 1490. And yet the brilliance behind the madness is undeniable. Leonardo understood lift, drag, center of gravity, and aerodynamic flow centuries before humans stopped thinking. The sky was the domain of angry gods. His notes weren't the scribbles of a lunatic. They were the building blocks of aeronautical engineering. He observed how birds tilt their wings, how wind behaves, and how turbulence forms. Then he translated it into diagrams so detailed that modern scientists still nod respectfully before adding, also, this would kill you instantly. The biggest flaw in the design wasn't Leonardo's math. It was the reality of human anatomy. Humans can barely lift grocery bags on a bad day, let alone flap themselves into the heavens while attached to a wooden death trap. Leonardo underestimated two things. Gravity's hatred for the ambitious, the average Florentine's cardio. But even though no one in the Renaissance ever soared majestically with Leonardo's wings, unless you count flying for half a second before making an unscheduled appointment with the ground, the idea was revolutionary. The ornithopter wasn't a failed invention. It was a prophecy. Leonardo didn't build the first successful aircraft, but he sketched the first blueprint that made aviation thinkable. And in the end, that's what genius does. It falls, crashes, and burns so that 400 years later, someone else can fly. Leonardo da Vinci had a bold idea. If humans were going to fall from great heights anyway, and let's face it, they might as well do it with style and a slightly reduced chance of death. So he invented the world's first known parachute, a pyramidal construction made of tightly woven linen stretched over a wooden frame. Picture a tent. Now imagine someone voluntarily jumping off a tower while wearing that tent. That's Leonardo's parachute. In his notes, he confidently wrote, "A man with this device shall throw himself down from any great height without injury," which is a very poetic way of saying, I have not tested this, but I'm sure it'll be fine. The design itself is impressive. For long wooden poles converging at the top, linen stretched like a giant funnel, and a platform underneath for the unfortunate volunteer. In theory, it works. In practice, it requires someone willing to climb a very tall structure during a time when most people fainted from standing too fast. But here's the twist. Leonardo wasn't completely insane. His parachute should have worked. And modern engineers who reconstructed it proved just that. In 2000, a skydiver named Adrian Nicholas made a replica using Renaissance materials and jumped with it and survived. He described the landing as smooth, a sentence Leonardo would have loved to hear 500 years earlier. Still, we need to appreciate the level of arrogance it takes to design something meant to break your fall from a lethal height before anyone had even considered the word's terminal velocity. Renaissance citizens barely trusted ladders. Meanwhile, Leonardo was out here casually suggesting that people yeet themselves off towers with a linen house strapped to their backs. One thing Leonardo understood better than anyone, though, was air resistance. His notes show he recognized that drag slows descent long before physics textbooks existed. He even sketched experiments with falling objects to observe how the air cushion behaves. And all of this was done without calculators, wind tunnels, or the basic safety instinct most humans possess. Leonardo's parachute wasn't just a device. It was a statement. What goes up must come down, but maybe not immediately. He imagined a world where humans could escape burning towers, collapsing bridges, or poorly timed engineering experiments. Was it practical for his era? Absolutely not. Was it genius? Without question. As long as you weren't the volunteer testing it. Just when you thought Leonardo's obsession with flight couldn't get any more unhinged, he decided to invent something even more ambitious. The aerial screw. The world's first conceptual helicopter. Picture a giant screw made of linen and wooden ribs shaped like a spiraling cone. Now imagine 4 Renaissance men standing around it, grabbing poles and spinning the thing with enough force to lift a platform into the sky. If this sounds like a terrible idea, that's because it absolutely was. The aerial screw is brilliant on paper. Leonardo understood the physics of lift before physics understood the physics of lift. He realized that a spiral structure rotated quickly could push air downward and push the machine upward. This is in fact how actual helicopters work. The problem: helicopters require an engine. Renaissance Italy did not have engines. Renaissance Italy barely had reliable socks. Leonardo's solution was manpower, which is hilarious because the average 15th century Florentine had the physical strength of a baguette. These were people who collapsed from walking uphill. Yet Leonardo expected them to windmill a 500-pound flying corkscrew fast enough to escape gravity. The math didn't math. The physics didn't physics. And the materials, well, let's just say linen and pinewood are not known for their aerospace durability. But here's the genius. Leonardo did identify the core principle of vertical flight. He had the vision, just not the horsepower. His sketches of the aerial screw include layers of technical detail, load distribution, spiral geometry, force transfer through rotational torque, airflow compression, all without calculators, textbooks, or safety regulations. This was raw intellect mixed with pure delusion. Even the modern engineers who rebuilt it said the same thing. It works. If you replace humans with a small engine and the entire structure with aerospace-grade materials, which is essentially saying the idea is genius. The execution is homicide. Still, you have to admire the audacity. Leonardo wasn't content with gliders or wings. He didn't want to imitate birds. He wanted to imitate the sky itself. A machine that rose vertically, hovering above the earth like some divine mechanical dragonfly. It never flew, of course. The only thing the original aerial screw would lift is everyone's eyebrows, but the idea survived. And centuries later, helicopters were born. Not from trial and error, but from the imagination of a man who simply refused to let gravity boss him around. Leonardo da Vinci believed that if humans couldn't dominate the skies just yet, they might as well dominate the water. And so he set his sights downward, literally, inventing one of the world's first diving suits. This, of course, was during a time when most people were scared of the ocean, suspicious of fish, and convinced that anything underwater was either a demon or tax-evading mermaid. But Leonardo saw a strategic opportunity. His diving suit was a strange, ambitious creation. Imagine a leather bodysuit stitched together with Renaissance craftsmanship, which is to say sturdy, but mildly alarming. The face mask was fitted with two glass eye windows that probably fogged up immediately, ensuring the diver couldn't actually see anything. Breathing was handled through long tubes that ran up to a floating air bell at the surface. If that sounds fragile, that's because it was one strong wave. And suddenly, you're not looking at the enemy ship. You're looking at St. Peter. The suit wasn't designed for fun snorkeling trips. It was meant for stealth naval sabotage. Leonardo imagined divers swimming underneath enemy ships, soaring holes in the hull, and slipping away unnoticed while the vessel slowly took on water. Essentially, it was Renaissance special operations, just with more drowning risk and less training. And as usual, Leonardo thought of everything, including a small pouch attached to the front of the suit for tools or possibly stolen snacks. He even included a section in his notes describing how a diver, when feeling threatened, might hide at the sea bottom, using a breathing reserve to wait out danger. This was bold, coming from a man whose contemporaries thought the ocean was basically haunted soup. What makes the diving suit so fascinating is how plausible it actually was. Leonardo understood the principles of air supply, pressure, and mobility underwater long before scuba tanks or regulators existed. The problem wasn't his mind. It was the technology of the time. Leather, glass, and cloth tubes were not ideal materials for extended underwater missions. Most divers would have lasted about 10 minutes before the ocean politely removed them from the gene pool. Still, Leonardo didn't care. He wasn't aiming for practicality. He was aiming for possibility. His diving suit wasn't just an invention. It was a declaration that even the sea, vast and terrifying, was merely another puzzle waiting to be solved. If Leonardo da Vinci had one weakness, it was that he could not resist the urge to redesign warfare. Patron asks for a painting. Leonardo delivers a blueprint for a battlefield nightmare. Patron asks for a sculpture. Leonardo suggests a rotating cannon platform that can erase a small village. The armored tank was the crown jewel of this habit. An invention so ahead of its time that everyone in the 15th century stared at it like it had just insulted their mother. Picture a gigantic metal tortoise rolling across the battlefield, covered in curved plates of armor and bristling with cannons arranged in a perfect circle. Inside this war turtle sat a team of soldiers cranking gears to move the behemoth forward, which already tells you the first floor. The Renaissance diet did not prepare anyone for cardio-powered tank operation. Bread, cheese, and occasional plague outbreaks do not build the thighs necessary to propel a mobile death dome uphill. Leonardo's design was brilliant and insane. The sloped armor would deflect arrows, stones, and probably insults. The interior layout protected its crew from enemy fire while allowing them to blast in any direction they pleased. It was essentially a medieval press this button to ruin everyone's day machine. Anyone facing it on the battlefield would immediately rethink their life choices, their alliances, and possibly their underwear. But here's where Leonardo's genius becomes suspicious. The gear system he drew was backwards, completely inverted. If you built the tank exactly as he drew it, it wouldn't go forward. It wouldn't even spin. It would sit there like an angry armored biscuit. Historians have debated whether this was an honest mistake or subtle sabotage. Leonardo claimed moral objections to war, despite inventing enough weapons to start several. Some believe he purposely flipped the gears so no warlord could actually use his creation without fixing the plans first. If so, it was the most passive-aggressive anti-war protest in engineering history. Even with the gear problem solved, no medieval blacksmith could have produced enough lightweight, durable metal to build this monster. Cannons required gunpowder. Armor required craftsmanship. Wheels required not collapsing. The Renaissance simply didn't have the manufacturing muscle to bring this beast to life. But the idea was terrifyingly real. Leonardo didn't create the first working tank, but he imagined it with such clarity that later engineers essentially said, yes, this. Let's do this. 400 years later, his armored tank wasn't built for battle. It was built for the future, a warning, a prophecy, and a reminder that Leonardo was always several centuries ahead, dragging humanity behind him like a confused toddler. At some point in Leonardo's career, he looked at a normal-sized crossbow and thought, yes, but what if this could level a small town? Thus was born one of his most theatrical inventions, the giant crossbow, also known as the ballista on performance-enhancing drugs. It was roughly the size of a cottage, which is fitting because firing at once could probably remove several cottages from the map. The thing was 40 feet wide with limbs so massive they required a full squad of soldiers just to pull the string back. The bow arms were made of laminated wood reinforced like a battering ram. And the central firing track was long enough to launch bolts the size of telephone poles. Leonardo envisioned it hurling stones, flaming barrels, or oversized bolts into enemy formations, all with a dramatic flair that suggested he cared deeply about battlefield aesthetics. It's easy to imagine the moment. Two armies staring each other down. Tense silence in the air. And then someone rolls out a crossbow big enough to qualify as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Morale on one side goes up. Morale on the other side packs its bags and leaves. But as with many of Leonardo's inventions, brilliance wrestled with practicality and promptly lost building. This monstrosity would have required more wood than most forests could politely provide, along with carpenters who didn't faint halfway through construction, transporting it to a battlefield. Forget it. You would need a team of oxmen, several wagons, and possibly divine intervention. Even if you managed to assemble it, the loading process alone would take so long that your enemies could simply walk around it, take a nap, and come back refreshed. And then there's the firing mechanism. Leonardo imagined a sophisticated tension and release system, but with Renaissance materials, this meant hope the string doesn't snap and remove someone's head. Still, the idea of the giant crossbow is peak Leonardo. Equal parts genius, intimidation, and designer chaos. He wanted warfare to be not only effective, but visually impressive. If you were going to annihilate your enemies, you might as well do it with the Renaissance equivalent of a siege weapon on steroids. And while no historical record shows this beast ever being built, its presence in Leonardo's notebooks proved something important. The man had no concept of too much for him. War machines were not merely tools. They were statements. Loud, ridiculous, terrifying statements. Long before anyone invented the phrase rapid fire, Leonardo da Vinci looked at battlefield muskets and decided they were unbearably slow. He was tired of watching soldiers shoot once, reload for 8 hours, and then die before finishing the process. So, he invented a device that officially made him the Renaissance's most dangerous efficiency expert, the 33-barreled organ, the first conceptual machine gun. This wasn't a gun so much as a complaint made physical. Leonardo thought, if one musket is good, then 33 muskets fused into one unholy instrument must be better. And thus, he designed a terrifying contraption arranged like a deadly pipe organ, rows of barrels set in a fan shape, able to fire almost simultaneously. The concept was simple. Instead of one soldier firing one shot at a time, multiple soldiers would wield this monstrosity into position and unleash a volley so overwhelming it would make the enemy question every decision that led them to that battlefield. After firing, the entire set of barrels could be rotated backward while the next preloaded set rotated into place. Reloading became a conveyor belt of chaos. It was brilliant, terrifying, and about as safe as juggling torches in a gunpowder warehouse. The main flaw wasn't Leonardo's ingenuity. It was physics, metallurgy, and the general 15th-century tendency for weapons to explode in the user's face. Muskets of the time struggled not to burst from a single shot. Imagine firing 33 at once. The only guaranteed outcome was that someone somewhere was losing eyebrows. Then there was the weight. The machine gun was so heavy that it required a small team of soldiers to drag it into battle. And by the time they got it in position, the enemy might have already relocated, eaten lunch, and gone home. Even so, the underlying idea was shockingly modern. Leonardo understood that battlefield dominance wasn't about reloading quicker. It was about not stopping at all. He anticipated the concept of continuous fire centuries before anyone else. His sketches carefully show air flow around the barrels to prevent overheating, recoil distribution, and firing patterns meant to clear infantry lines like sweeping crumbs off a table. It wasn't built in his lifetime, mostly because no one in the Renaissance had the courage or the life insurance to try it. But the thinking behind it paved the way for what we now recognize as machine warfare. Leonardo didn't just speed up battle. He reimagined it one disastrously unstable volley at a time. In a world where everything depended on horses, transportation, farming, social status, and the occasional dramatic exit. Paying attention. Steering, of course, was where things got interesting. Leonardo's cart used differential gears, a concept so advanced that Renaissance engineers would have stared at it the same way modern people stare at tax documents. It meant the wheels could turn at different speeds during a turn. Revolutionary genius. Completely unnecessary for a wooden vehicle shaped like a breadboard. Modern researchers built a functioning replica and it actually worked. It moved. It turned. It behaved like a toddler on roller skates. Unpredictable but undeniably mobile. Watching it roll across a room is both inspiring and vaguely threatening. Like witnessing the birth of a technology that will eventually cause traffic jams and road rage. Leonardo's cart wasn't fast, practical, or even remotely safe. It didn't need to be. It existed for one purpose, to prove that movement didn't require animal power. And in doing so, Leonardo accidentally invented the fundamental principle behind every automobile ever built. The Renaissance world wasn't ready. The roads weren't ready. The horses were definitely not ready. But the future, it had already started rolling. At some point in Leonardo's career, he decided that humans simply weren't dramatic enough. Paintings, fine. Flying machines, interesting. But what the world truly needed, apparently, was a robotic knight. A fully mechanical warrior designed to terrify enemies, impress nobility, and possibly start the Renaissance version of a robot uprising. Leonardo's robot knight was not a sketchy doodle or a half-finished idea. He built the thing in the late 1490s. During his time in Milan, he constructed a humanoid machine made entirely of gears, pulley, and metal plates. This mechanical soldier could sit, stand, raise its arms, and move its jaw, which is impressive considering most actual knights could barely do those things without help from 3 squires and a chiropractor. The design was based on Leonardo's own anatomical studies. He dissected bodies to understand muscles and tendons, then recreated those movements using mechanical analogs. Where a bicep would normally sit, he placed a system of cables. Where joints rotated, he installed precision-engineered gears. Every part of the robot mirrored the human body, just without the complaining, sweating, and susceptibility to plague. Historians believe Leonardo designed the robot partly as entertainment for the Duke of Milan's court. Imagine it. A grand banquet, nobles sipping wine, musicians playing lutes, and then out of nowhere, a metal knight rises from the floor like it's auditioning for a Renaissance talent show. People must have screamed, applauded, fainted, or all 3. Considering this era thought comets were divine warnings, the sight of a mechanical man probably had at least one monk questioning his entire belief system. And yet, the robot was more than a party trick. It was proof that Leonardo understood the mechanics of human motion long before robotics or biomechanics existed. He wasn't just copying muscles. He was engineering movement. His notebooks show shockingly modern concepts: feedback systems, joint articulation, and layered gear assemblies. This wasn't whimsy. It was early automation. Of course, the Duke never used the robot for actual battle. It was far too valuable, too experimental, and far too likely to fall over if a bird sneezed near it. But the fact remains, Leonardo designed the first humanoid robot in history. A walking, talking, gear-driven knight centuries before electricity existed. Leonardo didn't just dream of machines. He dreamed of mechanical life. And that should concern all of us. After surviving plague outbreaks, incompetent leadership, and city layouts that looked like a toddler's scribbles, Leonardo da Vinci came to a bold conclusion. Humanity should not be allowed to design its own living spaces. People were messy. Streets were filth canals. Sanitation was optional. And cities, every medieval city, smelled like garlic, sewage, and stress. So Leonardo did what he always did when reality disappointed him. He redesigned it from scratch. Thus emerged his ideal city. A blueprint so advanced and organized that the Renaissance wasn't even remotely ready for it. Leonardo envisioned clean streets, efficient transportation, advanced drainage systems, airy plazas, and multi-level design. Yes, he wanted cities with layers. One for people, one for carts, one for waste and water. He essentially invented the modern concept of zoning centuries before anyone thought maybe we shouldn't store dead animals next to bakeries. At the heart of Leonardo's vision was the idea of beauty through function. Buildings were symmetrical. Ventilation was intentional. Light entered homes without requiring residents to push aside moldy curtains. His canals would be redirected and engineered to prevent flooding, eliminating the charming seasonal pastime known as watching your belongings float away. He even proposed wide streets, something unheard of in medieval Europe, where roads were usually 1 donkey wide and filled with enough hazards to qualify as obstacle courses. Leonardo wanted broad avenues for air flow, sunlight, and easy movement, as if he had magically predicted that one day people would panic when stuck in traffic for more than 3 minutes. But of course, there was a problem. Actually, several. First, Leonardo's ideal city required intelligent leadership. That alone doomed it. Renaissance rulers wanted shiny statues and fresco, not infrastructure improvements. Second, it required money, and Renaissance money was usually spent on wars, weddings, and occasionally extremely unnecessary banquets. Third, his designs were so perfect they were essentially alien technology. Asking 15th century Milan to build this was like asking a medieval baker to whip up a Tesla. So, the ideal city remained a dream, ink on paper, centuries ahead of its environment. Modern urban planners, when shown Leonardo's blueprints, react with a mixture of admiration and existential crisis because everything he proposed we are still trying to implement now. Grid systems, sewage management, walkable streets, vertical planning. Leonardo solved it all before door hinges were standardized. The tragedy isn't that no one built Leonardo's ideal city. The tragedy is that we still haven't. Leonardo da Vinci had a special talent for looking at ordinary things like rivers and deciding they were personally offending him. Medieval armies were constantly slowed down by water crossings. And nothing irritated Leonardo more than inefficiency. So he invented the revolving bridge, a portable, collapsible engineering marvel designed for armies that wanted to move quickly, strike unexpectedly, and probably violate several natural laws in the process. The idea was elegant. A bridge that could be folded, carried, deployed, and removed faster than an enemy could say. Wait, where did they come from? Leonardo envisioned a lightweight wooden structure with a clever hinge and pivot system. A squad of soldiers could carry it like a giant ladder, drop it across a river, march over it in perfect formation, then pull it up behind them before anyone figured out what had happened. It was a logistical fever dream. Fast, mobile, and slightly rude to any enemy attempting to catch up. This wasn't just a plank with attitude. Leonardo's bridge had counterweights to stabilize the span, locking mechanisms to secure it, and a rotating base that allowed deployment at multiple angles. It was in essence the Renaissance version of a tactical now you see us, now you don't. Armies that used it could appear where they shouldn't be, disappear where they shouldn't disappear, and thoroughly confuse any general who didn't have Leonardo on speed dial. Of course, the brilliance of the revolving bridge also highlighted a major theme in Leonardo's life. He was inventing for people who were not mentally prepared. The average 15th century soldier was already struggling with basic tasks like not dropping their pike. Now imagine asking them to carry a precision-engineered folding bridge without breaking anything or themselves. It's unclear whether Leonardo ever tested this with actual soldiers, but the odds of them assembling it correctly on the first try were roughly equal to the odds of a chicken successfully reading Latin. Still, the revolving bridge was centuries ahead of its time. Modern militaries use deployable bridges based on the exact same principles. Portability, speed, and let's cross this before the enemy realizes we shouldn't. Leonardo didn't just propose a new tool. He proposed an entirely new philosophy of movement. But like so many of his inventions, the revolving bridge lived in the purgatory between genius idea and no one here knows how to build that. His patrons wanted flashy weapons, not practical problem-solving devices that required brains and craftsmanship. Yet, the bridge remains one of Leonardo's purest works. Clever, efficient, slightly confusing, and completely superior to anything the Renaissance was ready for. By the time Leonardo da Vinci encountered the printing press, Europe was already losing its mind over this new invention that allowed people to mass-produce thoughts without needing a monk who could write faster than the human lifespan. Most scholars celebrated the press as a triumph of knowledge, literacy, and communication. Leonardo, however, looked at it and thought, cute, but it could be better. This is the fundamental difference between Leonardo and everyone else.